So today we're going to be looking at a video from RenoVision DIY, which is a channel I love, by the way. And I don't really want to counter signal Jeff or what he's done. In fact, I think his channel is very important, and he's great in his lane, which is making tutorials on how to renovate your house on your own without having to spend insane amounts of money through a contractor. So I support him, because I like all that stuff. But this video is him going out of his lane and really exposing his boomer mindset. And that's the main reason I wanted to pick this video, because it perfectly illustrates that mindset. As we know, boomerism is not constrained to a specific age group, but it's a mindset. This video from Jeff is about why he loves the housing market. Jeff is Canadian. He's here in America right now, but he is Canadian. Housing here in America is crazy at the moment, and so it would seem ridiculous that anyone would love the state that it's in. But don't worry, Boomer Jeff here will explain why it's actually a good thing. Now, we are going to have to watch a couple minutes of him talking and setting this up before I can jump in, so just a heads up, but let's get into it.
Hello, everybody out there in the YouTube world. It's Jeff from RenoVision. Today we are here live talking about why I love the housing market, okay? The bottom line is I'm crazy about what's going on right now. And I wanted to do this show because there are a lot of people who are fear-mongering about what's going on in the economy. Can we just break this down before we go any further? Bottom line is today's show, we're going to talk to you about the evidence since 1940, about the value of homes, about what happens in inflation, about why it's such a great investment, about why inflation does not hurt you if you're a homeowner. It only hurts you if you're not. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what you need to do to get into the housing market, because the future is going to look just like the past. It is the most consistent, predictable market on the planet, and that is housing. All right. So we're going to talk about some numbers today, and I'm going to show you a couple graphs. I've got my board here. I'm really excited. My studio is getting bigger. I've got more toys. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Now, listen, let's just jump right into this. I love the housing market, and I'm a little older than a lot of the folks that are watching the show. And you young people, you're a very unique point in history, okay? You have got a very narrow glimpse of the world history. So you don't remember what it's like back in 1970, 1980, all right? My older generations, they remember back to the Second World War, right? And so that kind of historical perspective is what we're going to talk about today. Let me just jump right into this. I'm going to grab my graph and pull it out. All right. This is the median house prices in the United States since 1940. And when we talk about this, we're talking from an American perspective. It's our largest audience, but all of the Canadians out there know, all the folks that are living in Europe, you all have the same issues going on, okay? It's very, very consistent in a lot of places around the world. This is why this is so fun, because very seldom is anything consistent around the planet, okay? 1940, the average, the median, not the average. Median is the middle of the bunch, all right? So that's the billionaires buying their mansions, and the average guy just coming back from the war or whatever, buying his little war bungalow. The median was $2,938. Can you even imagine that? Now, it's not really impressive because, you know, your salary sucked too back then, but here's the deal.
Well, I would challenge that. You can say they made less, but that doesn't mean it was worse. I mean, the reason why you say their salaries sucked is only in comparison to today's astronomical worthlessness of the dollar. Yeah, sure, they got paid less than what we do today, but their money went way further than ours does. And this entire chart is proving just that. It's showing how crappy our money is today and how much less purchasing power we have compared to previous generations.
Like, take a look at the numbers. 10 years later, all right? It more than doubled. 10 years later, it almost doubled. 10 years later, it almost doubled. 10 years later, it more than doubled. 10 years later, it almost doubled again. And then 2000, that was not very impressive, was it? 2000, that was not very impressive. But what you want to take a look at is the 20-year rolling average. Remember, a house is an investment, and investments are not something that you buy and sell on a regular basis. That's called gambling.
That statement right there, a house is an investment. That already frames everything the boomer thinks about the purpose of a house. You buy a house, and it naturally goes up in value, and then you sell it. That is the rule, apparently.
Take a look at the 20-year. If you bought a house in 1940, 20 years later, it was worth 12 grand. It's 4 times. Now, you have to live somewhere, right? So if you have to live somewhere, then maybe consider getting into homes, buying your own house. Go from 1960 to 1980. There's a lot of crap that happened in the middle there, okay? We had wars, we had energy crisis, we had 22% mortgage rates. Yeah, I know. You think 5.5 and 6 is bad and the sky's falling, but 20% mortgage rates. Those were horrible. But you know what? Even with all of that going on, doubled, quadrupled. 20-year term, from $17,000 to $80,000 the median house. That's 4 times with all that crisis. There were wars in there and everything else going on. The sky's falling. End of the world's coming. I remember going up to year 2000, we got to that point where we were concerned because computers are so integrated in our society. We thought they're all going to fail because they didn't know how to. They weren't sure if the clock would roll over to 01 or not. Can you believe that? And it was on the news cycle for months. People were panicking. Governments were spending tons of money, getting ready for the big crash. Never happened.
Y2K was a very legitimate threat, and it was only averted by the efforts of nerds everywhere. But what he's getting at is what boomers think about America in general. Yeah, there's ups and downs, there's all this stuff going on, but basically we're invincible. And this growth will always be infinite. And in fact, it's our duty to do everything we can to keep this bubble going.
Now, 2022, this is an interesting year. This is last year. Real quick, I want you to put down there in the comment section how much you think the median house price was in the USA at the end of in the year 2022. God, I'm so old. I'm still in the 1900s.
Yeah, we know.
All right. I'm going to give you 2 seconds. And then what is it now? That's the biggest question. What's going on with the trend right now? All right. Now, in year 2022, we finished off 428,000. Okay. Now that's extreme, right? That ain't normal. That's 4 times in like 22 years. That's a huge jump. But you think that that's not normal?
Yes. I unironically do believe that it is not normal.
Wait a minute. Let's go back in history. In 20 years, we went from 3 to 12,000. That's 4 times. Different dollar value, but still 4 times. Like this actually, year 2000 to 2022, which is 22 years, not just 20, underperformed compared to 1940 to 1960. Think about that. The market did not grow as fast as it did back then. That should be shocking. This growth, everybody talks about unprecedented. No, it's not. It's not even all that exciting. It's not spectacular. Okay? It's just 4 times in 20 years. It's boring. What is it now? Right now, 392. And it's expected to go down to 380 at the end of the year. Okay? It's a bit of an adjustment. And what we're talking about is this. We've got a curve. All of this data on a graph looks like this. Right?
You just drew infinite growth, which is unsustainable. I mean, you drew a bubble. That's what you just did.
But in truth, it goes like this. Ups and downs and bumps along the way. But over the long term, this is what happens. Now, if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you don't own a house yet, I want you to stop and just think 20 years from now, that number is going to be at least double. At least. You can't find anywhere in history where it didn't at least double in 20 years. And up to 4 times as much. So it's going to be somewhere between $800 and $1.6 million for the average median home in America. If you don't have a plan to get in the housing market like in the next 6 days, you need a plan because you don't have time to wait. If you aren't saving for that deposit or that 20% down, or you expect the government to rescue you and change the mortgage rules, forget it. 2008 means we're not going to be changing mortgage rules to make it easy to get a mortgage.
But they are, though. They absolutely are. If you are a low-income minority, meaning someone who probably cannot pay back the loan, the system is bending over backwards to get you into a house that you cannot afford, which is exactly what happened leading up to 2008. This is another example of how I always say that the difference between me and other people politically is the levels of trust that we both have in the system. Jeff assumes that the government is applying lessons learned and they're adapting to best practices and they're improving and they're avoiding past mistakes, which we know is a bunch of bullshit.
If anything, it'll get harder. Have you noticed the trend? Everything in life is trying to squeeze a certain section of the population out of the housing market into rental and into being broke for the rest of your life. Everybody else is on a path to success. And if you're not, you need to get on it. All right. You got to do whatever you got to do to get on it, because this train has already left the station. Okay. Here we go. Next graph. This is why I'm excited about the housing market, because we have really exciting inflation right now. I know nobody likes that right now, but I like it. I'm a homeowner. I love inflation. Here's my new graph. Housing prices versus inflation since 1940, 1980, 2020, and now. Here's the graph. This 2008. A little adjustment, right? In the grand scheme of things, we just lopped the top off of that sucker and went on another run.
The boomer makes two very poor assumptions, and Jeff made them already. The entire thing runs on the first assumption of infinite growth. It just always quadruples every 20 years, and it always has, and it always will. It's the housing market, the most reliable market that there is. That's why everyone ignored the people who were saying that the housing market would collapse in the years leading up to when it actually did. So that's the first assumption, infinite growth. It's just always going to go up, no matter what. And here's the second assumption, that there will always be a sucker who can financially afford to buy your overpriced house. The boomer himself would never spend $1.2 million for the median-sized and priced house in America, but he absolutely expects you to. In fact, he's counting on it.
Housing is the most consistent, predictable, guaranteed success, make you rich kind of investment on the planet.
It all depends on someone richer than you to overpay for the same thing that you bought. This is how crypto works as well. Well, I bought this NFT for $2 million, and my God, what a deal, because imagine what it will be worth down the road. It's an investment. But at the bottom of it all is the need for an idiot, or in the case of the boomers, someone who had the misfortune of being born after them, to buy that investment and pay them out. And this can only work for a few generations before the average person gets priced out of the market pretty quickly. This is one of the reasons why infinite growth is unsustainable. My friend Todd Lewis, aka Praise of Folly, and I did a stream on the boomers, and he brought up this exact phenomenon. Here's the clip.
And, they get to ride this. It's what I call the first one in principle, right? It's a principle in economics where if you're the first one in to a market, the unit cost of growth is cheaper. It's the cheapest it'll ever be, right? And furthermore, the first one to get an economic benefit is the one that can then leverage that down the years more than anyone else. Because if you get the economic benefit 10, 20, 30 years after somebody else, the guy ahead of you just has so much more behind him that it negates what you have. There's going to have to be a corresponding move in your direction, which, of course, in American politics never actually happens.
So if you just go down this line of thinking, in this guy's mind, in 40 years, the median home price will be $3.4 million. And that'll just be considered normal. What? You don't think that's not normal?
But you think that that's not normal? This growth, everybody talks about unprecedented. No, it's not. It's not even all that exciting. It's not spectacular. Okay? It's just 4 times in 20 years. It's boring.
In my generation, we'll tell our grandkids to quit whining and that it's normal. And that 40 years from then, on their generation, the houses will be $27 million. And so they'd better get on it.
It's just 4 times in 20 years. It's boring. And right now we're lopping the top off that sucker again. Like I said, it goes up like that. Now here's the thing. Right now, Russia, China's in the news. The election's in the news. Always something in the news. And now that we've got these bloody phones in our hands all the time, we're consuming information that's really useless so fast. And you can easily get caught up into thinking, the world's crazy. I shouldn't have kids. You can't go back in history when the world was any safer, any less crazy. I mean, we had world wars. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. You might not even know what that is if you didn't go to school. This is so long ago. We had an energy crisis in the 70s. People were lined up for miles trying to be able to buy a tank of gas. Couldn't even put gas in their cars. And we followed that up with crazy inflation and 20% mortgage rates in the 80s. And then we had the Cold War. We had Iraq. We got Iran. They were fighting each other for the longest time. We got Afghanistan, North Korea, blah, 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 blah. Billy Joel wrote a song about it. The point is this. There's always been craziness. But what isn't crazy is when you move on with your life, grow up, get established, get yourself your house, right? Maybe find somebody else that you can attach to in a relationship that you can go in together on that purchase and get moving forward. Because if you don't get on with it soon, you're going to be priced right out of the market.
As always, in the mind of the boomer, the world began around 1940, as seen on his graph, and nothing is relevant or desirable before that point. I had been working on this series called The Foundational Falsehoods of Leftism, and the first video I worked on was about the concept of progress. Of course, in this guy's worldview, we were the good guys in World War II. The society we live in is basically the best one ever created. And if you want to simplify it down even further, it's that everything in the past was barbaric and horrible, and we've done nothing but improve and refine ourselves as humanity across time. Things were worse in the past, and things are better now, thanks to science, technology, civil rights, diversity, global trade, etc. Which of course conflicts with what we see on our phones. And I would make the argument that the reason these things are on the phone, why news stations and people on the streets feel compelled to whip out their cameras and document it, is because it's not normal. So here's an excerpt from something I wrote in that episode. Is the news negative simply for clicks, or is it because the things that happen in the modern world are an aberration, a distortion, a sign of the rot and decay that hangs in the air and affects us all? The things we see on the news are not normal. Somehow, even though none of us have ever lived in any other system, we know that it's wrong. The lizard part of our brain knows it's wrong and is constantly ringing the alarm bells and forces us to whip out that phone and start recording. His advice is basically just quit looking at it, stop looking, and comfort yourself in the delusion that the infinite growth will save you in the end. This advice only works for the boomer who already holds all the wealth in this country. The advice of just settle down and become established, aka the American dream, is basically dead already, and is only getting more dead as time goes on. And the events on your phone are related to that decline. You could ignore it all, but you do that at your own peril.
Because what graph I don't have here is the pathetic graph of the average salary.
Exactly. Exactly. And he brings it up, but watch, he doesn't spend very long on it, because to do so would crap all over his point.
It underperforms. It's been doing something like this, starting at the same spot and going like this. And every year that goes on, the gap between how much you get paid and the cost of your house is getting wider and wider and wider. And they're not changing the mortgage lending rules so that you can go and have a job that's $100,000 and get a $25 million home. They're not going to do it. That's where we're heading. So this is why I'm excited, because I'm a homeowner.
This is the problem with the boomer right here. In this exact attitude, it's doublespeak. He's holding two contradictory beliefs at the same time. By the time I retire, my house will be worth 8 times what it was when I bought it 40 years ago. But at the same time, wages haven't increased at all, and the dollar is worth nothing, and no one is working anyways, and so nobody will be able to buy my home, and that's why I'm excited. Woohoo! Well, if inflation is so great, why didn't we just jack up the rates 1,000,000% like 100 years ago? Wouldn't that be the best case scenario for everyone? Now your home is worth $10 gazillion, Jeff. My God. Why didn't anyone think of this before? This reminds me of how German inflation went. In late 1922, a pound of bread cost 160 marks. By November of 1923, a pound of bread cost 200 billion marks. Now, the critic, the glass half empty kind of a guy, would say that that was bad. But old Jeff here would say that it was a great time to be selling bread. And if you don't have a plan to get into bread in like the next 6 days, you're missing out, buddy, because inflation doesn't hurt you as a bread seller. It only hurts you as a bread buyer. And screw anybody who points out the massive discrepancy between the two.
One of the reasons I'm excited about this housing market, and then I'm going to stop my rant and get onto the Q&As, half of the homes in North America were built before 1975. We have a labor shortage with the trades. We're not building anywhere near what we were building back in even 2010. Like before the 2008 crash in the United States, we were building twice as many homes as we are now, because everybody that was building them is retired. Now, the population density issue, we got that sorted out. We got lots of immigration, and we got lots of people dying off. Baby boomers. Hey, death is part of life. Okay. They're kicking the bucket about 1 million people a year right now. And so we've got legal immigration set at 1 million. And, with what's going on, we might even have a labor force showing up through the back door. It has its own problems. I'm not going to get political.
If you want to destroy your country, you want to be like France right now, do what this man is advocating for. It's the pursuit of the almighty dollar above all else. We just flood the market with illegals. We just wait for all the baby boomers to die off, and bada bing, bada boom. Now you have a market that will just keep building all these overpriced homes for super cheap by hiring illegals to build them instead of American citizens. And that's how you destroy your country. You blow by every roadblock that was there before you for hundreds of years in pursuit of making this whole stupid bubble keep on going for as long as you can before it all just collapses.
But here's the deal. At the end of the day, half the houses are built before 1975. Nobody wants to renovate those things. But they retained almost as much value as a newer house. And so take a look at this. If you're going to go into the housing market and you're thinking, how do I get in? Think of an older home. There's no way a house built in 1975 in, let's say, Sarasota is worth as much as a home built in 1980 in Sarasota. Same square footage, same yard, same fence, same everything, because the plumbing is so bloody old. It's going to have to be replaced. So when you're thinking about these homes that are all built before 1975, before building code, the old technology that was in them, they all need major work done, but there's no one around to do it. Ta-da! This is why DIYers are going to take over the planet. You are going to be the richest people on the planet, because every time you go to work on your own property, you're investing in a house that's going up in value 4 times every 20 years, even if you don't touch it. And when you renovate it, you jack up the value. For every $1,000 you put in, you get $3,000 to $4,000 back in return on investment. So you can actually take your curve and you can go like this. 1975 house, over the next 40 years, you're going to go like this. And you're going to double your value over top of the fact that it's going to double or triple anyway. And that, my friends, is how you can retire in prosperity and have something to leave behind for your kids so that they can get their houses. If you're not doing it, you're not thinking down the road. That's what investing is, planning for the future.
So not even the cheap homes will be left for people. It will all be remade and revalued and flipped, and it'll price everyone out of owning a home because there will be no cheap homes left. Way to go. Could you just rebuild it and then live in it and pass it down to your kids? Oh God, no. Wouldn't want that. Everybody has to start out from zero. That's the rule. That's the American way. Anyways, I could rant about this forever, but I think you guys get the point. The video from this point on is not that great, so I'll stop it here. Unfortunately, I think this is the mainstream attitude in America, and for most people, they'll hear him say this and think he has a great point and knows what he's talking about. He's almost like the anti-Dave Ramsey. Like, hey guys, hey, if you don't get into massive debt now, you'll be in massive debt later. You can't afford to not be broke. Anyways, I'm curious what y'all's take on this is, so feel free to leave a comment down below. I will see you all in the next video. Peace.